Coming off back-to-back series losses at the hands of the Atlanta Braves and the St. Louis Cardinals, the Philadelphia Phillies hop right back in the loss column tonight and now have lost 4 of their past 5 games, this time at the hands of the San Francisco Giants. At the root of the issue was Taijuan Walker for this Phillies team, as for the first time in 2025, we saw the bad version of Taijuan Walker show up in Citizens Bank Park. That we were living through the honeymoon period, 10 innings pitched, 0 earned runs to this point, a guy who was on the short list of pitchers in baseball without letting up a run, and it all came tumbling down in the second inning today. Now, to dive into exactly what happened with this game, it was a 10-4 victory by the San Francisco Giants here, a pretty lifeless loss by the Phillies overall, and that's unfortunately becoming all too regular of a theme. What particularly is frustrating for me about this game is it did feel like the pathway to a victory was here. The Phillies leaped out to a 3-0 lead in the bottom of the first here. The bats were alive right from that opening inning, and then in that second inning, that is when things came crashing down for Taijuan Walker. He had a nice scoreless opening first inning there, a nice little pickoff play, which is becoming sort of a go-to move in his repertoire, but then was just hit around in that second inning. And that is the bad part about Taijuan Walker, is when it is bad, it is terrible, man. They are just meatballs over the middle of the plate. Now, in Ty's defense a little bit here, he did settle in after that pretty catastrophic second inning, did give him 5 innings on the mound, and ultimately pitched pretty well beyond just that individual inning there. I still think we just kind of know the situation with Ty at this point, that he's not quite the caliber or quality of arm that they need him to be or sign him to be, that contract would dictate. Now, the good part about this is it is fixable at this current point. The loss is still a loss, we understand, but from the overall pitching perspective here, there is a fix. That Ranger Suarez is doing his rehab assignments. Andrew Painter can be called up to the majors when the moment is right here, but I do think it was the proper outlook and decision-making process for this Phillies team to give Ty a shot at it. He'll still be around this Phillies team. The sense I do get is that this guy's not going to be cut or be traded or isn't really going anywhere. The fact of the matter is I think they will pull him from the rotation, and I think there's a pretty good chance that this was the last start that we did see of his tonight. But that was not the only problem with this Phillies team today, and I do think John Clark of NBC Sports did a pretty good job of diagnosing this loss as he tweets out, "The Phillies lose again. They have lost 4 of 5. Taijuan Walker gave up 6 runs. The Phillies were 1 for 11 with runners in scoring position and left 8 runners on base, striking out 13 times." And this lack of timely hitting or being able to connect with runners in scoring position is becoming more and more of a theme for this Phillies team. I'm not going to kind of chalk this up. In past years, we had really correlated it to, this commitment to the long ball, to the big hits, to hitting a home run, clearing all the bases, doing all that. I don't really get the sense that has been the case this year. If anything, I would argue that they have been more willing to play small ball, to drive it into the gaps here. But there also is sort of this inherent randomness to baseball that I feel that when a guy steps up to the plate, he's getting a double whether there's a guy on second or the bases are clear here, and these stars have not aligned for the Phillies to have those timely hits. I do think that is, I don't want to say purely random because obviously it matters and guys are going to try their best every single time they're up there, but the stars have not aligned to give the Phillies to be able to capitalize on those chances to this point. Now, there's a lot of victims or a lot of guys that have been very responsible for that at this time, perhaps no more than Brandon Marsh. And we did get some interesting comments from Rob Thomson before the game about Marsh specifically and what was said, and shout out to our very own Luke Arcaney, who was there in the building for this press conference and doing the press row currently as I record this video. But Rob Thomson says that Brandon Marsh will likely sit out the next 2 to 3 games. Marsh is currently in an 0 for 26 slump at the plate. That obviously is not good enough, and it is this lifeless is going to be the theme of this video. That's what we've seen from Brandon Marsh, that it feels there isn't even a chance that he is putting bat on the ball, and it is becoming all too common. Now, what is most frustrating about this to me is this continued frustration with the outfield spots. This is not year 1 of being underwhelmed by the production in the outfield. This is not year 1 of the center field options not being good enough for this Phillies team. We just keep running through the same cycle. And to give the exact production from the center field at this point, shout out to Phillies Tailgate here, who tweets out 45 at-bats from the center field position this season, 6 hits, 1 home run, 5 RBIs, 7 walks, 15 strikeouts. Those are hitting splits of 133, 250, and 200. That is not good enough. And I understand the pushback here, and I've personally made this case myself, that the Phillies are not going to win or lose the World Series based on what the center field position is doing. There are bigger issues with this team. Guys like Bryce Harper, who has not gone in that tear that is coming at some point. Guys like Alec Boehm, who, by the way, entering today's game, was officially, according to Fangraphs, the worst qualified hitter in baseball this so far, with a negative .7 WAR at this point in this game. I believe that will pass with Alec Boehm. We have to believe that is the case. But the only point that I will note there is I did think the start of this season was going to be really important for Alec Bohm for setting the tone for the remainder of his Phillies tenure, regardless of however long that was. The fact that he has started out so cold is concerning to me, and especially after he had 2 hit games in the first 2 games of the season and then has been a nightmare since this point. It is tough. I don't know what you do from here from the Phillies perspective, because you're damaging you're balancing two different things here. On one hand, you obviously want the production of the player. You want Alec Bohm to be returning to the best version of himself as a baseball player. You got to balance the mental side of things, and I do think there's some intricacies to dealing with him specifically on this. Now, the other side of the coin here is it is no secret that Alec Bohm has been involved in trade rumors, and I would be pretty stunned if in this current situation, as we currently know, if a team came to the Phillies with a legitimate offer for Alec Bohm, something that could potentially help this Phillies team, they would take it in a heartbeat. With that in mind, you got to be a little bit careful with the optics of things from another team perspective here. You do hurt Alec Bohm's market if you are benching him in certain situations, or even considering sending him down to the minors, which I don't think will ever cross the mind or be a legitimate thought there. But for what it's worth, he can be sent down for the minors without clearing waivers here. If you're talking about taking Alec Bohm out of the rotation at a regular rate, those are things that every team, Alec Bohm and the Phillies specifically, are all going to take note of here. So it's going to be a delicate situation. The best case scenario for all parties involved is for Alec Bohm to just wake up and start hitting the ball. But the fact that it compounds and we have all these individual issues on this Phillies team is why we're at where we're at. And by the way, for Rob Thomson specifically, I need to see the fire a little more. And particularly the play that I'm talking about tonight, it is not sticking up for your guy, JT Realmuto. As JT was rung up on what I would consider the worst strikeout I've seen all season. This kind of articulation of it, I still don't think does it justice. As watching the live game feed, felt like it was even further off the plate. It is that 6th pitch right there that he was rung up on. And JT Realmuto, who's one of the least expressive baseball players I've seen, a guy who just stays in his lane, handles his business, does not argue, was as fired up as I've seen him. He did not get thrown out of the game. Credit to him. He would have had every right to there, but it was strip the helmet off. I can't believe you called that. Doing everything possible not to argue. In that situation, Rob Thomson, man, I want you at the umpire's throat. I want you sticking up for your guy, JT Realmuto, who you better believe has a better feel of that strike zone than any other player on that field right now. And a guy, for when he reacts like that, there is something to it. JT is not a guy who gets upset over nothing, and the fact that he was, tonight was an opportunity where I thought Rob Thomson could have won over the clubhouse a little bit, and he missed the mark. He didn't do it. He didn't take that chance. I understand Philly Rob is an easygoing guy, that he isn't a guy that gets his feathers ruffled all that often. But we also know he can do it. We've seen this man get ejected by games. We've seen him get at umpires' throats. And at a moment where I thought the Phillies could have used a spark, he had a chance to provide it and didn't. So I did think it was a huge miss for Rob Thomson tonight. They obviously did not lose this game because the manager did not argue with balls and strikes or get ejected. But I do think that would have gone a long way in this locker room, particularly the way the season has started. So a huge miss by Rob Thomson there. Moving forward now, they got to continue to plug out of this. They got to find a way. And by the way, with that Brandon Marsh note, he was in the center field by the end of the game. So much for this rest a couple games. I get he didn't hit the plate. It was Cody Clemens who came in for the pinch hit opportunity there. So not reading into too much, but there's just some weird things that feel like it's going on with this Phillies team, man. I don't quite get what is going on. I don't understand why it is this lifeless approach, not having energy. And it felt like the energy was lost tonight, that they had it in the early moments of this game. The bats were awake. These guys were competing. And then by the end of the game, after the Taijuan Walker collapse, it was not there anymore, and that is a problem. There's got to be a little bit more resiliency. You got to have guys willing to fight, and we will see where things go from here. As far as changes that do need to happen, for Rob specifically, I kind of hope this is one that keeps him up a little bit at night, that he has to take his drive home tonight and think like, man, I probably should have stuck up for JT a little bit there. I probably should have shown a little bit that I care, because if I don't care, the team's not going to care, and that's sort of the vibe that I'm getting right now. I get that this team still does care. It's a marathon. All these things are completely fair, but the point being, I don't sense the urgency from this Phillies franchise that I would really like to be the case there. I think Rob Thomson could have set that tone. Other changes. I do think there's a real chance this is the last time we saw Taijuan Walker pitch this season. He might get one more opportunity and see how it goes. And he was good in the first 2 games of the season. He wasn't even awful tonight. I know 6 runs is 6 runs, but it was 1 inning is all it was. And I have sympathy for the guy who continues to compete. With that all said there, I'm a Ranger Suarez believer. We all know what he can bring to the table, and if he is ready, you plug him in there immediately. Taijuan Walker will not be the fix from a bullpen perspective, but at least that's an arm, another option that you have out here that maybe you can even use him as a burner guy when you are throwing him out there when it is, 10-4 in the 9th inning, as was the case today. But the bottom line is This team's got to find a way to dig itself out of it. That they have the pieces internally in this locker room. Things have not clicked together. Rob Thomson should keep tinkering. Keep Brandon Marsh to the sideline if you do think this is a mental thing, but this team has a lot of work to do. They got off to a solid start to the season, now have shrunk down. Let's hope this is the pit that they can start to turn things around, but not a convincing performance. Losing 4 of their last 5. There are some red flags with this current Phillies team, and I do hope we find a way to cover those up pretty soon. But let me know what you guys think on this overall game and the recent streak by this Phillies team. Where are you at in your level of concern? Drop that on a 1 to 10 scale in the comments. As always, appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning in this video here. Make sure you're hitting subscribe if you have not already to us here on Phillies Digest. Drop a like on this video here, and I'll be back talking to you next time. Peace.